In this short video, I'm going to talk to you about the who and the what of will execution in most jurisdictions in the United States of America. First of all, let's answer the question, who can legally make a will in the United States? In most jurisdictions, and especially under the Uniform Probate Code, which is the dominant and prevailing statutory model in most jurisdictions, the law is really crystal clear on this question. There are two tests. There's what we call the legal capacity test, and secondly, the mental capacity test. Number one, the legal capacity test says that anyone who is 18 years or older in the United States may make a will. So that test focuses on the attainment of the age of majority. When a person has reached adulthood, which we draw as a line in the sand at the age of 18, they can legally in the United States make a will. The second part of that test focuses on soundness of mind. Soundness of mind is a rather nebulous term. It has different meaning to different people. So what does soundness of mind mean? Well, the law lays out really a four-part test. Number one, to determine a testator's soundness of mind, we look at four different factors. Number one, does the testator know the nature and extent of their bounty? Do they know what they own and what they control and what they've acquired in life? So that's a property test. Can you determine what property you own, whether it be personal or real property? What have you acquired in life? That's the first part of the focus in the soundness of mind test. The second part of the focus in that test is looking at whether or not a person knows the individuals in their life who have a natural affinity and bounty, and who are the people who have the highest moral claims to their property at the time of death. Typically, those are going to be your blood relatives. So do you know the people around you? Can you comprehend who those individuals are? Who has the highest moral authority and obligation to make a claim at the time of your death to an entitlement to your property? So we focus on number one, knowing your property. Number two, knowing the people who are around you who can have an entitlement and the highest moral claim to your property. The third part of that test focuses on a person being able to look at these first two items and put together an orderly plan for the disposition of their property at the time of their death. So if I know what I own, I know the individuals who are entitled to what I own after I die, can I put together a plan that lays out what I want to have happen to my property at the time of my death? The fourth element of this test is just a test that draws these first three elements together. All of those first three things that I just mentioned a moment ago have to be present at the same time mentally in the mind of the testator, and they have to pull and draw all three of those things together to meet the fourth part of the test. So number one, I have to know my property. I have to know the people who have the highest and the most superior moral claim to my property at the time of my death. Thirdly, I have to be able to put together a plan that articulates how I want to dispose of my property at the time of my death. And the fourth element is putting all those things together at one time. All right, so that answers the who part of who can make a will. Now let's focus on the what part. In the average American jurisdiction, in order to make a will, there are technical and formal legal requirements under most wills acts that must be met. Number one, the will has to be in writing. The will has to be in writing. Number two, the testator must sign the will, or the testator can have someone else at the testator's direction and in the testator's conscious presence sign the will on the testator's behalf. So what does that look like? if I'm incapacitated, let's say I've lost the use of my limbs and I can't sign or use my hands to sign my will, I could summon someone in the room and say to them, look, I can't write my name, but I want you to sign my will in my name on my behalf at my direction. So I could summon someone to come forward, but they have to be in my conscious presence. I have to be able to feel and, in a sense, perceive them in my presence in order for them to take on this task. So that's the second part of the test. And the third and the final part of the test is that the will must next be acknowledged by two witnesses at a minimum. So the two witnesses have to be in each other's conscious presence. And the testator, number one, has to say to them, I've signed this document to represent my will. I want you to now witness it. So in a sense, the testator publishes the will to the witnesses in that metaphysical sense, even if they are not in the presence of the testator at the time that they execute or sign the will. But on average, and in most typical cases, the testator signs their will right in front of their witnesses. So this makes the acknowledgement part easy for the witnesses. The witnesses can easily say, well, the testator was right in front of us and he or she signed the will or the document that they purported to be their will right in front of me. So this is really important. Those three elements are necessary: writing, testator signature, and acknowledgement or attestation by at least a minimum of two witnesses. Now, there's a new little kink in the Uniform Probate Code that has not widely been adopted in the vast majority of jurisdictions. In fact, this provision of the UPC has only been adopted in a really tiny handful of jurisdictions. Nowadays, under the Uniform Probate Code, under Section 2-502, a testator may do away with the requirement of having two witnesses sign or attest to their signature or their witnessing or acknowledgement of the will in the presence of the testator. You can skip that step and simply have the will notarized, have the will be notarized by a notary public. Now, as I said, this provision isn't widely adopted. In most states, it is still necessary and important for the testator to, number one, make sure that the will is in writing, that they sign it themselves, or that they have someone sign it at their direction in their conscious presence. And then alternatively and thirdly, and most importantly, have that document be witnessed, attested to, or acknowledged in their presence, in their conscious presence, by at least a minimum of two witnesses. So this is just a quick summary of the who and the what is necessary for the proper execution of a will in most jurisdictions in the United States. Number one, if it's in writing. Number two, if it's signed by the testator. And number three, if it's attested to by two witnesses at a minimum, that will be valid in most jurisdictions in the United States. I hope that you found this short video to be somewhat helpful. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.